Hi guys! In this video I'm going to start tearing into the forward cabin. More specifically, I'm going to remove the old forward head. Right now the forward cabin looks like the front page of Hoarder's Monthly. Over the last couple of years the forward cabin has served kind of like my storage unit. Ava and I are trying to plan the layout of the forward cabin, and ideally we want to find room in here for a washer, a dryer, a freezer, a water tank and another diesel tank. I'm hoping we can find room for the washer and the dryer here in what used to be the old shower. We both agree that having one head aboard a 38-foot sailboat is perfectly fine, and that head is going to be here. As you can see, I've already built a part of it. There's going to be a shower where I'm standing now. This is going to be closed off. There's going to be a door over here. And that, of course, frees up the space that was the old forward head. My plan for this week was to start making alterations in the technical compartment, but I'm just going to move that back here and put the task for building an area for the washer and dryer up here instead, because I've decided to just leave the technical compartment alone until I'm done fiddling with the DIY diesel generator. I better engage turbo mode and get rid of all of this junk in the forward cabin. After just one application of Mess Be Gone, the forward cabin is looking a lot better. The next step is of course going to make the forward cabin look a lot worse again, but it's going to be a lot easier for me to grab measurements to see if we can actually fit the washer and the dryer in this area here after I've removed the interior of the old head. I think we're probably going to keep the V-berth where it is now because we can't really come up with a better idea. There is a version of the Warrior 38 and 40 where the bunk is located right where the camera is now. In that layout, the bunk is located right here where this vanity is and this little settee, and it's nice because it's a relatively big square-ish shaped bunk. I like the idea, but there is one big downside, and that's the fact that the person sleeping on the outside is going to have to crawl over the person sleeping on the inside to get out of bed. If you guys want to see what that layout looks like in real life, then I highly suggest you go check out the YouTube channel Sailing Kadoa. They also have a Warrior 38, but it's a slightly different layout than Athena. I'll include a link down in the description for their channel. Here aboard Athena, I would really like to eliminate this little hump here just to make it easier for us to get in and out of the forward cabin. It's certainly doable, but it would be easier without the hump here. Quick little side story here. When I purchased Athena, the previous owner told me that they had lost some US dollars inside of the boat during their circumnavigation. Now, I've pretty much torn out everything in the boat except the old forward head. So I have high expectations that we're going to find some treasure, but let's just get busy and tear into it. Ta-da! Now it might not look like it, but having removed the hump here makes it a lot easier to get into the forward cabin. I've built myself this little wooden doohickey here. This represents the size of the washing machine, and it is a front-loading washing machine. We're hoping we'll be able to fit the washer and the dryer over here. Now that might mean having to reintroduce a little bit of the old hump here to be able to fit the dryer on top of the washer. The reason I've built myself this little model of the washing machine is of course because the hull curves and also the deck curves. So figuring out exactly where we need to place the washer to be able to fit the dryer is a little bit of a fiddly business. Both the washer and the dryer are 85 centimeters high, and that means if they were the same depth, they would fit on top of each other here. But unfortunately, the dryer is a little bit deeper than the washing machine. It's a couple of days later, we figured out exactly what dryer we want, and you might just barely be able to see the mock-up of it there in the forward cabin. And as you can see, everything fits, which is really good news, and having this mock-up here in place also helped us figure out what to do next to the washer and dryer. The piece of cardboard that's wedged in place here represents a little table that's going to be awesome for folding laundry, but the real purpose for the table is to allow us to have a freezer in this area here below the table. Behind the table, there's of course going to be more storage. There's also going to be room for a little bit of storage below the freezer. Now behind the washing machine, we'll be able to fit a 200-liter water tank, and behind the dryer, well, we're going to have more storage that's going to be accessible from the galley. We'll cut a small hole in the main bulkhead here and put up another cabinet door, and that'll give access to that storage. Now there are a couple of comments I'm absolutely sure I'm going to get on this video. One of them is, have you considered a combined washer and dryer unit instead of having two separate ones to save some space? And yes, we have considered that option, and I don't like it for a couple of reasons. For one, all of the combined units use fresh water when they're drying for cooling, and they actually use quite a lot of water, and they're also less energy efficient than having two separate units. I'm also pretty sure there are going to be some people that think putting a washer and a dryer aboard a 38-foot sailboat is the worst idea ever, but well, I think it's a good choice for us because we're going to be spending a lot of time in some cold climates where we can't necessarily dry our clothing outside, so the dryer will be really nice. And as far as the washing machine, well, I have tried doing laundry in a bucket and it's not really all that fun. I've already picked up the washing machine. It's a completely standard household unit. You can also get washing machines that are sold specifically for caravans or boats, but I think given the fact that we've got room for it, a standard household unit is perfectly fine. Unfortunately, the dryer was not in stock, so it's going to take a few weeks for that to show up. And before I've got both, I don't want to build the support for the washing machine because as you saw, there was room for them, but the space was kind of tight, so I want to make sure I don't mess that up. But this weekend, I can still build the separation between the washer, the dryer, and the freezer because, well, it's basically already there. I just need to fit another little piece of plywood, but we'll get back to that a little bit later. Good morning, guys. It is Saturday morning. I've spent a lot of time this week working on getting the hull ready for paint, but I haven't shown you guys that because you've already seen plenty of fairing and sanding. I've gotten to the point where I think the hull is ready for its final sanding. After that, I only have the little radius here to deal with. I've got some tiny little voids there, but yeah, those should be easy to fix. The camera is probably not gonna pick it up, but here's an example of one of those little tiny pinhole voids. So I'm just gonna have to go over the entire radius and make sure all of those are faired. Of course, I am sure I'm gonna find some little imperfections once I've applied the first coat of primer, because I think I'm gonna use that first coat of primer as a little bit of a guide coat. But yeah, the bulk of the work is done. I think, weather allowing, I'll be able to apply epoxy primer to all of the faired areas next week. I've ordered the primer and it's white, which is really cool because that will give us a better idea of what the hull is gonna look like once it's painted. I'll be applying 6 coats of that epoxy primer to the faired areas. That's the recommended amount of coats when applying the primer with a roller. For that, I'll need around 3 days with dry weather, but let's not worry about that now, because for now, I've got more glorious sanding. That is 5 hours well spent. I am done sanding and fairing for today. Now I just really hope it doesn't start raining. I can hardly put into words how excited I am to apply the primer to the hull that I've been waiting for a long time. But speaking of excited, there's something else I'm excited about right here on top of the washing machine. Yesterday I picked up some stainless steel goodies for Athena, and just feast your eyes on the shininess. This shiny guy here is a part of the rebuilt steering pedestal. On top of this guy is gonna go this shiny guy here, but you guys are going to see this in more detail. Hopefully I'll be able to install this next week. Besides the parts for the steering pedestal, I also picked up a new one of these. I don't know if this is actually called a rudder shoe when it's on a skeg the way this is, but yeah, this is the new one, and this is what secures the rudder to the boat, or at least the bottom of the rudder. A little earlier in this video, I mentioned the separation between the washer and the dryer and the freezer. As you guys can see, there's already this little mini bulkhead here. That's the old separation between the shower and the head, and it's located basically in the perfect spot. So if I can just fill out this big open gap here in the middle, that should be perfectly fine. If I remove this little bit of trim here and get everything nice and sanded, I can use a glassed butt joint to just secure another piece of plywood in there, and that should be the separation done. That is every last little bit of the old forward head removed, and fortunately the bulkheads look in good condition. I've got a piece of 18mm plywood here, and if we can get this wedged in place, we should be able to use this for filling the hole. This should be a nice snug fit. Yep, this will work nicely. Now once I have the washer and the dryer, I believe I'm going to be able to bring this back to somewhere right around there, but I'm going to hold off until I've got both the washer and the dryer. I've mixed up a little bit of epoxy thickened with 406, and that is what I'm going to use for the butt joint part of this. Because of the way I'm going to be wedging that piece of plywood in place, I'm not going to get a perfect glue joint, but that's okay. The vast majority of the strength in a glassed butt joint comes from the glass and not the butt joint. I've cleaned up the bulk of the squeeze out, and I'm just going to let this repair sit here until the epoxy has become really tacky. That way I can lay up glass on both sides of this at the same time. That means I only have to clean my fin roller once, and the timing is actually kind of perfect because that means I can head back to Obelix, get some dinner, and then tonight I can come back and finish this. It's 8 o'clock and the epoxy is at least partially cured. The first thing I'm going to do is just to take Mr. Angle Grinder to get a nice smooth surface. After a quick swipe with Mr. Angle Grinder, I used my power plane here to create a little recessed area for the glass. I'm going to be using 2 layers of 600 gram BX. That should be plenty strong for what I'm doing here. I've set up my little work area here, so I just need to mix some epoxy and get busy wetting out the glass. If I was concerned about the strength of this joint, then I would be using wider strips of fiberglass, but I think this is going to be perfectly fine. And that is a simple glassed butt joint. It is super quick, super easy, and perfect for something like this. Good morning, guys. It is a rainy, dark Sunday morning. The epoxy should have cured at least partially by now, and yep, that feels perfect. And that means the separation between the washer and the dryer and the freezer is done. Which means I can move this task over to the done column. Of course, I still have to build the area for the washer and the dryer, but like I said, I'm holding off on doing that until I've got the dryer. Last week, I couldn't finish the galley because I was missing a hinge, but I have now found that hinge. Perfect. Which means I can also move this task to the done column. Things are trucking along. I am working very hard on getting the hull ready for paint. I am almost ready to install the rudder now that I've got the new rudder shoe. I just need a new keyway in the tiller arm and the rudder stock, but that is something I'm going to outsource. And I am also ready to rebuild the steering pedestal now that I picked up all of the shiny stainless stuff you guys saw a little bit earlier in the video. Last week I mentioned that this week's video was probably going to be a little bit on the shorter side because I knew I was going to be putting a lot of time into sanding and fairing the hull, and I just don't feel like filming more sanding and fairing. You guys have seen so much of that lately. So please excuse the slightly shorter length of this week's video. I really hope all of the time I put into the hull this week means I can apply that epoxy primer next week. Of course, that is very dependent on the stupid weather, but even if the weather is not good for painting, I should still be able to rebuild the steering pedestal and get that installed next week. And that is certainly a very important step to getting Athena back in the water. While I remember, I am sure I'm gonna get some comments about the weight or weight distribution here aboard Athena now that I've told you guys that I'm gonna be putting the washer and the dryer in. But yeah, don't worry about the weight and don't worry about the weight distribution. All of that, it's gonna be okay. Everything is gonna balance out and, well, it's gonna be okay. No need to worry. There was, of course, one very big disappointment here in the forward cabin this week, and that was the complete lack of treasure. I never found those US dollars that the previous owner mentioned. So yeah, I guess he was just mistaken, or maybe that was some kind of weird sales trick to get me to buy the boat. But yeah, no dollars in here. Just to be completely clear, I of course did not expect to find any treasure in there. It's odd because I so clearly remember the previous owner telling me that story, and I think he mentioned it was like $100 or something. So not like a ton of money, but certainly enough money that you'd want to look for it if you lost it. But yeah, no treasure here. And on that bit of depressing news, I'm gonna end this video here. Like I said, next week, hopefully epoxy primer, definitely steering pedestal, so that should be a lot of fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!